Hey everybody, how's it hanging? So I wanted to go ahead and talk about this because it was kind of interesting to see that the sim racing community has never changed. Um, so I don't know if you guys are aware of like actual like inside, you know, information about sim racing in general, but we we as a community are very toxic. I would say like there's a lot of toxicity that goes into sim racing, which kind of sucks because sim racing should be kind of like a haven amongst other communities, I would say. And we kind of are stuck like in the 2009 Call of Duty days, like first person shooters and stuff like that. That's just me personally, just looking at how the communities work. But sim racing, you know, I don't know what else to say about it. If you drive Sims, if you browse the iRacing forum, if you race leagues in older games like in 2003 or anything like that, um, sim racing can be a very very toxic community, and it goes into the business side as well because if you have not seen, it is basically a fucking shit show. So this guy William Marsh, or March, some I think it's Marsh. Um, he was explaining why he left Inside Sim Racing many years ago, like in 2014, and it was about Darin Gangi basically. And if you don't know who Darin Gangi is, he's basically somebody who started a internet website called Inside Sim Racing, or did he start it? I'm pretty sure he did. But he basically made blog posts, and then, the channel became huge. Basically, it's the leading, sim racing review channel, like whether or not it's about just the straight up games, the straight up simulators, or, gaming products for sim racing, like wheel modifications and pedal modifications and all that stuff. But William Marsh is a guy who, seems to be pretty devoted to sim racing, not only sim racing but also just like the whole community. He seems to be somebody who really enjoys covering sim racing as a journalistic standpoint and also a reviewing standpoint. He was picked up by Inside Sim Racing to be a blogger. And basically, with him being a blogger, blogging is kind of weird in general. Like, you're meant to give opinions all the time, basically. You're supposed to tell people what you think and what you feel and all that nonsense, which is good for, journalistic, integrity and such, giving your opinions and letting people know how you feel and letting people know what you think and how you basically act. And this guy seems to be somebody who really wanted to try his shot at, the sim racing community, and he was picked up by Inside Sim Racing. And for a few months after, he was basically being chosen by Darin Gangi himself to move to Washington State and be in, the YouTube videos and stuff. So he flew this fella out to, Washington State, gave him a good time and all this nonsense, so he could go and search for an apartment. And during that time, he was getting, antagonized basically by this guy who, has gotten a little bit power hungry. He hasn't had enough competition. His ego is through the roof. It was very weird because this fella, he seems to be somebody who, really wants to be in control of his destiny, and not only in control of his destiny, but also he wants to be in more control than he was at that website, which I can totally understand. If you don't have that mentality, you're not going to be a good journalist in general. You have to be, very, very point blank. You have to be very confident when you're doing journalistic work, especially like blogging, reviewing things and such. He told this, this William fellow, he told, Darin Gangi in messages, basically, I want to be as good as you, if not better, because I want to make this website better. I want to be, a top dog at your website alongside you. And he was basically like, yeah, that's how you should be, But then he was like, sign a no compete clause. And when your employer tells you something like that, that's very weird. You shouldn't say that to one of your employees, especially one of your employees who you are basically giving a boost or whatever. You're moving him up to the next level. You want a confident guy. I mean, what William did say was kind of weird, though. Like, I want to be better than you, basically, is what he said, which I can understand. When you want to be better than somebody, you're going to tell them because that's the right thing to do. But also, it's weird. There's a lot of weird stuff going on in this story. But this story is classic sim racing because later on, basically a few days after this trip to Washington, he was basically like, you know what? I don't really like this. Like, while he was in the hotel in Washington State, he was like, I don't like this. I'm not comfortable. I don't like how this guy is trying to rush me so quickly. And he basically said, hey, I don't want to do this so soon. I need a little bit of time. Wait until March. And this was supposedly in November or so. Or October, rather. Darin wanted to move him in November. He said, no, I don't really want to do that, which is fair. You know what I mean? Moving somebody out of their usual residence to move to somewhere to be a part of something much larger than what he was doing already, it's a big jump. You have to understand that it takes time for people to move into this new position. And basically he said, nope, let's wait until March. Darin was like, okay, we'll wait until March. And he started to subtly notice that Darin was getting more and more aggressive towards him, which is not something new for Darin Gangi. I mean, Darin Gangi is somebody who is kind of fucking out of his mind with power, I guess. Which, I mean, it's pretty fucking gross that people come into the sim racing community, basically demanding respect and also demanding power over something that is a free and open landscape. Because if you think about it, sim racing is a very untouched product, like, in general. Sim racing is pretty large. It's a large community full of, reviewers and channels on YouTube and websites and employees and employers, rather, I should say, that, really want you to be involved or whatever. But then they want to shun you away whenever you want to be involved and you want to do something better than what they're doing, which in any other community or job, like, if I said I wanted to be a better doctor than you, that's a good thing. You're saving lives. If I want to be a better reviewer of something, or a better commentator, or a better racer than you, I should have that mentality. And this guy did have that mentality. Darin didn't like that because he's been, the leader of sim racing journalism for a while. And that's how most of sim racing is. We are a very, very toxic community. I mean, I can almost speak from personal experience, but the things that I did, I brought upon myself, to be fair, so I won't even go into that conversation. But, I don't like every time something happens in sim racing, it's always got to be something negative. It's always negative. Always. Almost always negative. And it surprises me because this should be a community full of people wanting to broaden the horizon, number one, and number two, make things better, constantly improve, because simulation in general is about improving it to it becoming better and more realistic. But as a community, the sim racing community is unrealistic about what should be done. They always talk about me, this, and this, and they're usually people who have never done anything to provide the community with anything new. It's usually somebody who has a mindset, if I puff my chest out large enough, I'll scare you away. like you're some fucking pufferfish. You're gonna scare away the other fishes because you look scary and you're big now when you were small. This is a perfect explanation of that, because this is a guy who came in respecting Darin Gangi, wanted to be a part of what Darin Gangi was doing, looked up to Darin Gangi. You can tell throughout this video called Why I Left Inside Sim Racing, he was very emotional. There was many times where he tried to break down. You could tell. You could hear it in his voice. You could see it in his eyes. He was very, very upset and uncomfortable about the situation that he was in, and it's very, very sad to watch it, because this is a guy that, respected Darin Gangi and wanted his approval, basically, which, usually isn't the best way to go into a situation, quite frankly, journalistically wise. I'm sure he understands that now. You want your heroes kind of far away from you, if I'm going to be honest with you, but anyhow, you can tell that this guy was very upset, is basically what I'm getting at. And you can also tell how, he was noticing that he was way in for more than he bargained for. And that's kind of why he freaked out and said, hey, so listen, I don't want to move until March. You know what I mean? He could tell that the guy was getting more and more aggressive, because he was basically sending him mixed signals saying, hey, come over here. And then a few weeks later, after he was basically like, no, I don't want to do that, and then saying, I want to leave, because, he said before this guy even got the position, before he moved or was beginning to think about moving, he was like, you're going to have to sign a no-compete clause, which basically means if he gets fired from Inside Sim Racing, he would not be able to do the things that he enjoyed. That's a way that, the legal system can tie you down and make it to where you can't, go for your dreams and go for the gold, as they say. But, it was very, very strange how Darin immediately jumped on that bandwagon of, like, let me go ahead and Wall Street this guy into submission. And, it was funny, because I can think of many people who have done that in general. Not necessarily in my experience have they been like, hey, sign a no-compete clause. But people will bully you into submission over something that you may or may not be doing that could be better or worse than them. It doesn't even matter at this point, which is really fucking gross in this community. If you become successful in any way, shape, or form in the sim racing community, you are usually hit with a lot of backlash. And it's very strange, because you would think if this guy, wants to be better than me, that you can take that two ways. You can take it as an employer and be like, wow, I really hope that you're better than me. I really hope that you would do a better job than what I've been doing. So I'm going to bring you on as one of these main guys. Or you can be offended, but lie basically to their face, which is what the sim racing community is full of. It is full of people who like to, like I said earlier, puff their chest out and basically kind of bully you. The sim racing community is full of bullies. The sim racing community is really gross, and it's a shame, because this should be more or less a safe haven away from, most other communities, and the way that they work and the way that, they function. Because this should be a community where everybody is striving to make things better. And, that comes with, differing opinions. That comes with you talking about, what can we do to make this better together? It creates discussion. And Darin Gangi was somebody who literally was like, I'm going to lawyer you into a position that if you ever did anything to me, I could say, well, you signed a no-compete clause. I fire you, I take away your income, I take away your job that I basically handed to you, and then I can say later on in a few months, hey, fuck you, you're not supposed to be doing that. You signed a no-compete clause with me and Inside Sim Racing. It's super gross, and that's not how you should conduct, a business. It shouldn't be the way that you conduct your everyday life and your business. And this guy has been known to do that. So since then, he's apparently sold Inside Sim Racing to somebody else, which is a good thing because Darin Gangi has literally done not many things that are good for the community. If anything, he's made the community look worse because he was a main figure in the sim racing community. He basically almost more or less started the whole YouTube phenomena of reviewing things for sim racing, reviewing, simulators. And he took that, what he thought was power, and he turned it into something just fucking, toxic. He made it toxic because there will be more situations like this in the future where, somebody is gonna blow their lid off because they're getting competed with and they don't necessarily like it. I need to be top dog. Me. I'm the sim racing community. Hey, Darin Gangi, I have some news for you. You're not the sim racing community, okay, bud? You're not the sim racing community. You never have been. You never will be. As much as you thought that you were because you got the sponsorship with iRacing and you got, multiple insider informations, you're not sim racing. None of us really liked you to begin with. And it sucks, but I mean, it sucks to suck, I guess. And that's me being negative in the sim racing community, which for him, we should be, because he's pretty much what's wrong with sim racing, I would say. Like, what makes sim racing bad is what Darin Gangi is. Somebody who is very egotistical, does not want to have a discussion with people. He doesn't like to change his viewpoint. He doesn't like to accept the fact that he's wrong, and he's always been wrong on any sort of public dispute. He's always been the bad guy, and there's a reason for it. When it happened 6 or 7 times, you would think you would learn from it, but not Darin Gangi. Not Darin Gangi. It's because of that big fucking ego he had. He had a big forehead on him at the end, and it got even larger when, he fired multiple people at Inside Sim Racing, when he had the TID with, Empty Box and multiple others. Those are just the more, publicized ones, where he would have these tiffs with people, and he would always be wrong. He was always proven wrong, and he was always shown to be kind of a dickbag behind the scenes. You're somebody who owns a company within sim racing that is very important. You're very important at the end of the day, which kind of sucks because you were the worst person to be important in the sim racing community. It really stinks. It really sucks that he had to have been the guy, but, he's not really ever been the guy, and he'll never be the guy again. Thank God Darin Gangi is kind of getting the fuck out of here. We need less of that, and we need more of, basically what this guy was doing. Because at the end of his video, he kind of made it, to me, look a little bit corny, but he was like, nobody will ever shut down this channel. Nobody will ever tarnish what I've built. And that's kind of what we should do. We should do that. We should, have success and then be comfortable with that success and not be jerks about it. And this doesn't seem like a guy who's going to be a jerk about it. You know what I mean? I don't know. The sim racing community is very, very toxic and very gross. And I'm sorry to this guy that had to deal with that. It sucks when it happens, but, we will all move on, and hopefully, in the future, we can have less, problems like this if we don't have, Darin Gangis of the world being a part of the sim racing community. So I think everybody should be a lot nicer to each other. Even if you're on the forum and you've got nothing to do with a sim racing project or a sim racing company, you should be nice to people who are nice to you. Don't immediately come across as an asshole, because you just make the community look stupider and stupider by the day. Stupider and stupider by the day. And it stinks. You make this a toxic place to be. You shouldn't be that way. Be nice to people. Be respectful.